You know this photograph of Steve Jobs. You've seen the movie posters that became iconic. You've seen his work on the covers of Vogue and Rolling Stone. You've seen the faces he captured: Gigi Hadid, Kate Moss, Christy Turlington, Naomi Campbell, Michael Jackson, Alfred Hitchcock, just to name a few. With more than 180 Vogue covers and over 60 Rolling Stone covers, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest photographers of our time. Today we sit down with the storyteller, the visionary, the legend, Albert Watson. So settle in and let's get into it.
They walked the walk. Now nothing is off limits.
Fashion shines on the outside,
but behind every image is a story. And behind every story, a person. The ambition, the struggle, and the truth. With your hosts, Vlada Roslekova and Ines Ternokrak.
Welcome to the Fashion Host Podcast.
Hello, Albert.
Hi.
We're very honored to be here today. Thank you so much for welcoming us in your studio. And we had the pleasure already talking a little bit while we were setting up.
I'm happy you're here.
Thank you so much.
We have to admit that we're a little bit nervous. And I read somewhere that once you were also nervous shooting Hitchcock. And the famous photograph. Can we start there?
About you being
not
nervous.
shooting.
About you being nervous.
When you were, I spent 4 years at art college as graphic designer, then another 3 years at film school. So I came out basically with a degree in graphic design, and also in film school I came out as a director. But along the way I learned some photography, not very much. So I began working as a photographer, which I loved doing, and just out of the blue, I was in Los Angeles working. I had a nice small studio, and I got a call from Harper's Bazaar magazine in New York. Could I photograph Alfred Hitchcock? And when you're just out of film school and you get a chance to photograph Alfred Hitchcock, then it's a very big occasion. To do that. So I hadn't photographed anybody famous before. So to have the opportunity, of course you're nervous, and because it's at the beginning of your career as a photographer, then you're not so accustomed to shootings and so on. And there's a very good analogy about, learning to be a photographer. There's two major parts to photography. There's the technical side of photography, anything to do with photography, lighting, and just the mechanics of the camera and how to expose it, etc., etc. And then the other side is the creative side. And the creative side, I had plenty of education, but the technical side, it was very hard in the beginning, because I found technique. Everybody always thinks of me as being a technical master, but I'm not really at all. But I did realize that learning photography is like driving a car, so therefore what's important is to conquer the difficulty of driving a car, and what's important is where are you going. So that was the thing with photography. It was to get the technical things out of the way. So of course you're still learning every day. You learn something, and I found I just had to do homework, every weekend, every night, and because I understood that as I became better technically, it opened up creative doors. So I was there for creative. So with Hitchcock, I arrived and I had prepared what I wanted to do. And one good thing was that because I was a graphic designer and was part of the graphic design thing, is trained in concept thinking. all right? So they wanted to do Alfred Hitchcock holding a plate with a goose on the plate. It was for the Christmas issue, and Alfred Hitchcock was a gourmet cook. He loved cooking, and he was giving the recipe of how to cook a goose for Christmas to the magazine, and my photograph was to illustrate the recipe and the story. And so I thought about it, and I called them back. I said, I'm very excited to do it, very enthusiastic to do it, and I'm very happy to do it with a plate, but I think it's better if we do him holding the goose by the neck, unplucked. You know, sure, I said the wrong word there, plucked. So there's no feathers, just the goose's head's there. And if he has it by the neck, then I think it's funnier as a shooting. And he also, I didn't like the idea, he always wear a bow tie. So the problem was in holding a plate. The problem, I felt he was looking a bit like a maitre d' or something. Whereas if he's holding this goose with the legs and everything like that, and then we could have some fun with it. And then a very small detail, which you almost can't see in the photo, but if you look, you can find it. I put some Christmas decorations around the neck of the goose. So therefore you have the suggestion of Christmas in the shot. So it doesn't seem like an amazing, I don't think it's an amazing idea, but it changed the whole concept of the shooting. And they called back and said, the editor loves the idea, you do not have to do the plate. So I tell you that because it was one of the advantages of the education I had of trying to, what are you going to do when you turn up? You know, sometimes with young photographers sometimes say, well, I like to make it up as I go along, to be spontaneous and so on. And there are some geniuses that can do it, you know, just they're spontaneous and they can take beautiful pictures, amazing pictures, but there's not so many. The vast majority get stuck. And they you know, you have to be a bit of a Mozart or something like that to be able to do brilliant pictures without having any planning or preparation. And I always say to young photographers that the preparation, you should be really prepared. That doesn't mean to say you can't be spontaneous. That doesn't mean to say you can't be spontaneous about taking a picture. But the concept I put together for Alfred Hitchcock changed actually my career, because when that picture ran, I got calls from everywhere, from Europe, from New York. At that time I was in LA. And 2 years later I moved from Los Angeles, 1976, and I moved in Old Studio in New York. And I began, at that time I was working for everybody. I mean, I was working for French Vogue, mainly French Vogue and English Vogue. And then when German Vogue started, I started working for them. And then later, and I was working for American Vogue, but then later I moved over to with somebody called Franca Zazzani, who was at Italian Vogue. And then I moved over and began working when she took over Italian Vogue. And that was, so that was basically how I worked with some of the fashion magazines. But I mean, I was working for Rolling Stone, I was working for GQ, I was working for English magazines, En Plus, The Face,
Impressive
Details
numbers.
magazine here. And
So would you say that back then when they just called you and you were you felt a little nervous that you were invited for such a photo shoot, so you switched your attention from like the importance of it to the that you have to be prepared, you did your research, you came up with the creative ideas, and that kind of shifted the energy
yes.
of not being nervous any longer, right?
Well, I did have initially a lot of success in fashion. I was essentially a handheld photographer, motorized camera, snapshot. A lot of time with quite a good concept. I liked, you know, the sad thing that happened a little bit now, there's very little concept in a lot of fashion photography. You know, you might look at it and you say, well, that's not true. Look at the amazing hair, look at the amazing makeup, look at the interesting clothes. I wouldn't say amazing anymore, but interesting clothes. You say, yeah, but that's not the photographer's concept. You know, he might be involved and suggest the hair can be big, the hair can be small, the eyes can be darker, and so on, etc., etc. But essentially, there's not so much concept in a lot of it now. It's basically the girl. And to be honest with you, the fashion people, very often at magazines, they wanted that. They wanted a beautiful girl with good hair and makeup, and they wanted her to have a little bit of attitude in front of the camera, and basically, you want to see the clothing. You know, that was what it was. That's where it ended up, and therefore, a lot of the great, what I would consider great photographers at that time, they were used less. You know, like Guy Bourdin, the amazing Guy Bourdin, Irving Penn, who Vogue always worked with, and Richard Avedon, and the magazines didn't want such strong pictures anymore. I'm not saying it's bad; they just didn't want them, you know.
Because they wanted to be more focused on clothes.
Yeah, I think they wanted. Yeah, but you know, the interesting thing was, I mean, it's not so much focused on the clothes. It's not that really good photographers, and if I use Avedon or Penn and Guy Bourdin, it's not that those photographers didn't show clothing.
Yeah.
That was the point. That was the bad point, because they said, well, you can see the kind of you could see the clothes in their shot, but they had another layer on a lot of their shots. Not so much Irving Penn, but sometimes Avedon and definitely Guy Bourdin. They had a concept behind the picture.
Do you think your background in graphic design and film actually gave you that depth and layers of conception of object that you're shooting or person that you're shooting deeper and more?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was drawn into fashion because at that time, the 70s and 80s, a little bit in the 90s, at that time, you could actually create interesting images and they would run in the magazine, you know? And I went through a transformation. So essentially, I was a fashion photographer in the beginning, but then I developed into a photographer who photographed fashion. And there's a difference there. There are some brilliant fashion photographers, but back then, there were brilliant photographers who worked in the fashion business. And there was a subtle difference between them, you know. You look at the history of Elle magazine. Elle magazine was always full of fashion photographers. You know, they photographed fashion. And fashion, at that time, the photographers, you know, the kind of the great Stephen Meisel, who I know, he was the epitome of a fashion photographer. I mean, he loved, you know, the color on the nails, or the lips could be a little bit darker. I mean, you know, you could send the clothes over to him and he would do his own styling, because he had a very good knowledge, has a very good knowledge of what is fashionable things that are going to happen. So he was very good at that. I think he's a great fashion photographer. I don't think he's a great photographer, but I think he's a great photographer of fashion. So he's a great fashion photographer. There are different categories, you know. I mean, you know, I was always someone that was, first of all, heavily involved in printing. That came from the graphic design years. So I was heavily involved in thinking about, you know, photographs, how they were going to look printed, how the quality was of an image and so on. And I was always interested in different things. I was interested in sometimes concept photography. I spent 2.5 years trying to get in, and eventually got into the Cairo Museum to photograph the personal clothing of Tutankhamun. So I knew that the photographs were never going to be amazing photographs, but the concept was amazing. In other words, 99.99999% of people had never seen Tutankhamun's gloves because they were in a special archive, you know. So therefore, having the gloves, you know, and his socks and things like that, that's a concept thinking. So it's, yeah, it's fashion apparel.
It's an art.
But I liked it. The glove of Tutankhamun was the oldest glove in the world.
Yeah.
Because it was 3,500 years old. And, you know, you look at it and you say, wow, Tutankhamun had a thumb and 4 fingers, you know, and 10 fingers altogether, etc., etc. So the idea of, that's concept thinking. I was also interested in landscapes. And I did that. And then sometimes I was interested in fashion in a landscape. So I did that. Sometimes I was interested in studio lighting, and I worked on that. So there was many different things that I touched base. Sometimes I didn't do a lot, but in the beginning I was a reportage fashion photographer. I did more reportage style in the past, a long time ago. But then I developed a much heavier style, and almost went back to graphics.
Yes, some of the portraits are graphic.
And now, the interesting thing is, which I'm happy about, now there's a lot of that early work in, not the very early, where I was reportage, but from 82, 85, 87, 1995, 2010, that period of time, a lot of that work that was done, because it was heavier, now looks very good in a book, and also looks good in a gallery, and also looks good in a museum. So I'm happy about that.
Do you think about that when you are planning your shoot?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because in the beginning, because I was successful in making money as an easy, you know, snap, quick, and you know, it didn't mean I wasn't careful with the lighting. And I'm not snap. I was careful. I was always careful with how is the woman looking, you know, how is it look, you know. And basically, I began to change, I think it was 82, 83, and that's when I realized that, and I began thinking about doing a book, and I did the book Cyclops,
Yes.
that one there. And when I began looking at all of these fashion pictures, a lot of them I couldn't use in a book. They look great in a magazine, but you put them in a book, and
What changes when it's in a book?
well, a good analogy is between, say, Elle magazine and Vogue. You know, that Elle was absolutely a fashion magazine, and in fact, in the end, Vogue became influenced by Elle. And the difference between the two was that, this is a very quick analogy, but you know, in Elle you had a $100 dress, in Vogue it was a $400 dress. But a lot of the approach became a little bit similar. So therefore the dominance of Elle began to have a heavy influence on Vogue, and Vogue bit by bit transitioned into being like sophisticated Elle. That's what it really what happened. You know, so at that time, the 80s, I changed because I was interested in things that had weight. And that began to have a conflict sometimes with editors who preferred a lighter approach, you know, more of an approach where it's the beauty of the woman and a nice portrait of the woman, and kind of straightforward forward shooting of the women that are in front of you, and I don't oppose that. I don't think it was a bad. It's just the way things happen. You know, it was you think of the photographer Peter Lindbergh, who's very good fashion photographer. It's the ease of which he just photographed. The women look beautiful, and the makeup's never exaggerated. He was 99% in black and white, you know. So in a funny way, you never, you know, in the fashion, it was a little bit unusual that because for credits for makeup, for example, it was a disaster because all you can really credit is what you can say. She's wearing a beautiful deep red makeup, but the picture's in black and white.
Yeah.
So you go, well, what does deep red mean? Is it deep? Is that fire engine, or is it darker, or is it light? Is it an orange red, a yellow red, a magenta red? What, you know, and so on. So basically, he wanted to do that style of picture, and it was popular because it was easy, because you stay with beautiful women. Basically, you stay with supermodels because they're beautiful. You stay with Christy Turlington, and so on. Picture beautiful. In fact, the picture that's there, oh, it's not there anymore. The one of Christy Turlington. Yeah. It's with the smoke. No, yeah, that was in Egypt when she was very young.
The one with smoke.
But there's one with smoke, and they wanted me. A magazine wanted me to do pictures of Christy Turlington, but more portraiture approach to it. And that's where I ended up going. I slowly but surely went away from basically, you know, doing beauty pictures as opposed to portraiture. So I was interested in, I was looking with some friends at a convention thing at a fashion magazine, and we're looking at 10 pages of pictures of a girl, and I was discussing it, and I showed something. I had a piece of paper, and I put it over, and I cut a hole about the size of a quarter, right? And I said, here's the different photographs, different dresses, different hair, different, and so on. I said, but look here, if you put that onto her, she has identical expression in every single picture. Yes. Identical. It's just, she's there, you know, beautiful girl, and nice, beautiful eyes, you know, all right? She's there. Next page, she's there. Next page, she's there. There's never, you know, anything.
Personality.
And of course, because I was heavily involved at that time doing portraiture, yes, I began to incorporate the portraiture into some of the fashion pictures. So I pushed some of them. And sometimes Christy Turlington's super smart. And she, over the years, learned to do different things, learned to be better in front of the camera.
Did you communicate that to her?
Yeah,
or did she just learn it on her own?
Every so often I come across her at some event or something like that, I say hello. But I photographed her when she was 16 on that project there. She was 16, 17 years old. And that was done in Egypt. And that's actually a good example. That was a transition point there where I began to do pictures that looked like that. So as far as a fashion magazine is concerned, as far as a heavier picture, that picture in an edition was sold out. Mm-hmm. So you
was it hard for you to present the work deeper meaning in every photo that you take to editors and change their
it was
aesthetic?
Was it ever declined by magazine?
It was difficult. You mean the transition from being lighter weight into a heavier weight? No, I think it was.
Your work is very famous for that deep layering of everything.
The problem, there's a very simple answer to that, and the answer is it wasn't hard, the transition, because when you're taught a disciplined system, it was back then very disciplined, at university, and you're on a government grant, so if you don't do well, they throw you out. You know, it's not like here.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like there was no days there like now. They say, well, Thursday, Friday, you can go and be creative and do what you want. I mean, it was not like that at all. It was tough. It was 9 until 5, and then 3 days a week, 6 till 8:30. And you signed in. You had to be there. If you were missing 2 classes, you got a letter. So it was tough. So my point of telling you that story is it was a disciplined education, but at the same time, because the education was in art and graphic design at that time, that tattoos your brain as a young person. You know, it's not a very good analogy, but if you learn to ride a bike when you're 10 years old and you don't ride a bike for 15 years, you can get on a bike and ride a bike. You somehow it stays in your brain. So therefore, that education of concept, design, graphics, art, and so on, I wanted the work to be stronger, heavier, more meaningful, and more unusual and more surprising. So that's where I was going. And it was the education. So it was already in my brain. So I was just going back to that, actually. Mm-hmm. So I left it and then went back into it in the 82, 83, 84, 85, and then went back into it heavily.
Yeah, but we can say your iconic work, like most recognizable portraits, are coming from that era, from that time, 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it was that period of right up until.
Do you think that was
periods now? You know, the portraiture that's done now is more sophisticated than even the 80s. It's far heavier, stronger, more powerful. The concept.
Because you matured as a photographer and as a person, and you are looking at from psychological point of view when you are portraiting somewhere now.
Yes, look. Basically, who you are. I was always someone that enjoyed talking to people. When I was 5 years old, my mother took me to a doctor. And the doctor said, "What's wrong with Albert?" She said, "Well, all day long, he never stops talking."
Sorry, it's funny.
It's incredible. I mean, she went to the doctor for that, not like smallpox or disease, but he never stopped talking. And she said, "I can't get him to go to bed until nearly 11 o'clock at night. He's only 5 years old, and he goes to bed at 10:30, 11, and he's waking up at 7, 6:30 talking." That was I had no problem talking to anybody. If I was photographing the Queen of England, I would say, the first thing I said to her, it must be really difficult being Queen. And she said, it is sometimes, So, I was always like that with people. I was the same with I treat everybody, a celebrity, the same as if I'm photographing a porter in a market in Marrakesh. I treat them the same way. I have respect for them. I treat them carefully. They like some water. I treat them the same way. Celebrity, the same way. So I treat everybody the same. So if you're interested in photographing people and you don't like talking to people, you're in the wrong business. Because the communication, and also remember one other thing I told you. I came out of film school as a director. So therefore, I had 1 or 2 things in my suitcase that I could use. You pick out the things that you could choose when you're dealing with Nicole Kidman or somebody like that, or anybody, Michael Jackson.
Do you see when they come into your studio, do you see already, are they there willingly? Are they friendly with the camera, or they see camera as a threat?
Everybody's different.
Yes.
Some people are completely nervous some people are really nervous about being photographed.
Exposing
Other
themselves?
people don't care. I mean, two actors, both winning an Academy Award, Joaquin Phoenix, totally nervous. I mean, almost
Yeah.
like this. Jack Nicholson didn't care. He was busy chatting up my, I mean, he loved women, Jack Nicholson. You know, he's
We know that.
looking, and any woman walks in, his attention would immediately go towards a woman. And he was funny because I had a very nice young blonde assistant who had a great personality and was a very good assistant and had a lot of energy. So he started chatting her up, you know, and saying, "Are you busy this evening? Would you like dinner?" and so on. I mean, and she was maybe 28 by this time. I don't know what he was, maybe 58 or something, 60. But he was chatting her up. And then he said to me afterwards, he said, you know, 15, 20 years ago, I didn't have to try. Now I have to really work hard with women. You know, he said, I have to make an effort now. He said.
Extra.
So it's funny. So I'm just saying, everybody's different. There's two extreme. Joaquin Phoenix,
But do you see that?
won
Do
an
you
Oscar.
sense that?
Jack Nicholson won an Oscar. One didn't care about photographs. He thought it was funny that I wanted to photograph. He always thought it was funny people wanted to photograph him. You know, he just thought he was funny looking and it was funny, you know. And he knew he was a good actor. I think that for sure. Because I said that to him once, because I photographed him a lot of times. And I said, you're very light-hearted about it. I said, but you are a very good actor. He said, yeah. I said, eventually I learned what to do and I enjoyed it. So, but Joaquin Phoenix, it took a long time. I had to sit with him for nearly an hour.
To talk to him,
to talk to him and speak to him. And you know, there is a thing with actors that's very well known. There are some actors, some of the British actors, the stage actors, they're very chronically shy people. And the way you say, well, if you're so shy, how do you go in front of a stage with 600 people and an audience live?
in character.
You know, and how are you, all the people are looking at you to say words, you know, how do you, and they all conquer it the same way. When they're on a stage, they're not there.
Yes.
It's obvious, you know.
Yeah.
They're not there, it's somebody else, you know. If the person's name is John Smith and you're playing George on stage, then you leave that and here's George.
Yeah.
You know.
That was me when I was doing modeling a long time ago. That was my also shield. It's not me, it's not Ines, it's a person who this team made me to be.
And some of them are very good at it. I mean, like even like singers like Sade.
Yeah.
Sade created an image of herself that wasn't really her,
Yeah.
and she knew that. I mean, I did videos with her. I did so many shootings with her, and she's a fabulous person. Has a great personality, and nothing like you would imagine the personality. But she created an image.
For the public.
You know, basically, she created an image that she thought would work, you know, and does work. And she never. Part of the image was she was strange because she's so vibrant and she's so kind of sexy because of the vibrancy. Mm-hmm. She's not promoting sexuality, you know, trying to
Yes.
push herself a body weight, but her appeal is she's so attractively with her persona, you know. And therefore, she never liked to ever do something that was sexy. And in fact, the picture there, that one there, of Love Deluxe album, I mean, the story behind that was, she had all these clothes. I never really liked the way she dressed as Sade. It was quite conservative, and she quite liked a lot of Indian, almost sari type things, you know, that she liked. She had no connection with India, she was Nigeria, but she liked that kind of style, and yeah, every so often she'd put on a different shirt or a different, you know, stuff like that. But she really didn't, she never would promote herself as being sexy. And at that shooting, I said, I had an idea for you. I said, I would like to, I brought with me from New York some gold makeup, you know, for the skin. And here was a concept again,
Yes.
right? Love Deluxe. Deluxe, meaning it's a deluxe. You know, it's special, you know, it's
Expensive.
deluxe, you know, expensive, whatever, you know, or deluxe. And I said the gold is deluxe, you know, okay? And then she said, but what am I wearing with this? And I said, well, first of all, you're not wearing anything, we'll do it nude. She said, nude, like that, you know? And I said, yes. I said, but you know, you can cover yourself. I said, it's not about that. It's not about seeing breasts or anything else. And it's about you, the love deluxe, you know. And I said, I'll shoot it in black and white with the metallic skin, and they'll introduce into the black and white some tonal color into the black and white picture, right? So I said, I mean, I'm doing the shooting for you. If you don't like it, you know, you tell me, and I'll send you the negatives. You can have the negatives. I don't care. I mean, I just feel the responsibility that I think it could work. So anyway, I went ahead and we did the Polaroids from it, and I did the shooting, and I showed her the Polaroids. We were shooting film back then, and I showed her the Polaroid, and she said, "Well, it is beautiful," but she said, "Never for a cover." She said, "It's too sensually sexy." I said, "Okay, that's fine."
Okay.
So the next thing was her manager, Roger Davis, still her manager, Roger Davis, and the members of her band all came over and grabbed me and said, "Make sure you process that film." They said, because they all looked at it. That's the cover, you know. And I said, well, she doesn't like it. And they said, we will work on her like that. So they said, make sure that the first thing we see from the shooting is a print of that. So I printed it 12-inch back then. You know, you talk about an album, 12-inch script. So I sent that in as a thing. And of course, there was a lot of arguing and so on, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, she said, okay, in the end.
And now it's legendary.
And it was enormously successful for her. And for me, but I mean, I did it for her.
Yes,
you know.
of course. But did you know?
The thing to emphasize to you, which I know you understand, there is a concept there. You know, the metallic skin, doing kind of printing the picture in gold, Love Deluxe, and then just the sensuality of a woman.
Sensuality, I was about to say, it's more...
So I'm working with her as a portrait of her, thinking about the music and so on, you know.
Yeah, the photo is behind you, so we're
looking at it.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more thing about the concept. Do you think the fact that you are blind on one eye has an impact on the seeing that and concept in a different way than other people? Because when we are looking at some of your work, there is so many things to see, even black space, like something behind that is not in the first there has a depth and it's thoughtful. There is a thought even in a back blank space, let's say.
Yeah, well, so it's good. I appreciate that question.
Yeah.
That comes back to graphics. That comes back to graphics, one. Also, coming out as a graphic designer and print maker, printing, concept of printing, you know, and how that, you know, works. The one eye is of no consequence. And unfortunately for the answer, it's not a magic one eye thing. The majority of photographers Slightly different now with iPhone and so on, but the majority of photographers use one of their two eyes to take a picture, because they then put the camera up to their eye and they look through the cup and they use one eye to frame the picture. They don't try and get two eyes in there, they do one eye. Now, because of digital, it's slightly different now, because people look at the here, look at the thing, because I never do. I'm still old school at that. I don't need to. I look through, because everything I do, like every photographer does, everything is a rectangle. So it's either panoramic, widescreen, square, vertical, horizontal. So but it's always the right angle, rectangle, like that. So it's what you put in the rectangle. But essentially, you use one eye to compose that, like that.
So it's
So you
your
s-
background.
So you see the world
Yeah,
usually
I
photograph,
just can't
framed,
emphasize. I
framed.
can't emphasize enough that in a lot of the work, it's, and I'm sorry to keep mentioning, it was a little bit the education, art, heavy art education. So it's not just graphic art. It was a heavy art education and the history of art,
Yeah.
And cinema.
and also the way I spend I would say if every 10 books I buy, 8 of them are on art and maybe 1, 2 with some photography. But a lot of it is looking at painting and work like that.
Were you? Do you remember the time when you started to be curious about it? Since you were little, your family.
The time I was serious about,
No, the art.
always.
Always.
I mean,
Since-
I always connected via graphic design. I was always, yes, I love graphics. I love that idea of communication and graphics, that you could be artistic and do a poster. I did one very successful poster when I was at art college. And I used photography really for the first time in graphics. And there was a play at the local theatre in Scotland, and they asked me to do a poster to advertise the play. And the play was called Toys in the Attic, which is a very clever thing about the title, because it was two sisters that loved each other but had psychological problems with each other. And so therefore the idea, the play on the words, attic meaning your brain, the top of the attic's at the top of the house, the top, your toys in your attic mean things from your childhood interfere later in life. And so it was a psychological play. And what I did was I got children's building blocks, when you just have the wooden blocks, all right? And I took a photograph of a young girl, and I put the photograph on the front of 6 of the building blocks, all right? So the one photograph went over 6 blocks. So then I re-photographed them and I adjusted the image. So you had a very straightforward image of a girl, just a little child, very innocent looking, but by moving the bricks, I could alter the perception, and it made her look a little bit disturbed, even though the photo was nothing. So this was a clever play on the idea of toys in the attic, but the psychological of moving the bricks. Visually, it was very strong, and of course for me it was very successful.
Was it the very first time you photographed something, you said? Or no?
Pretty much the very first thing I ever photographed. We had, as a graphic designer, we had 1 day a week of photography you could take, or 1 day a week of lithography. You know, it was working with stones and so on, and 1 day a week of pottery was the choice. So you would be trained as a graphic designer, but back then they felt it was important that you had a craft subject. So pottery was a craft,
Hands-on.
lithography was a craft, and photography was newly introduced, was also a craft because you were learning printing and so on. So, and we only had one camera, and there was, in my class, there were 5 people in the class, and you know, there's like 8 people doing lithography, and about 8 people also doing, so that in that 1 year in the design school, there were 25 of us, I think, at that point. And the other ones that were involved in design, like fabric design, they, as part of their course, they had to do screen printing, so that they didn't want the ball. So you had to wait for a weekend to get the camera. And on the weekend, I had it, and I went out on a Sunday with the camera. You got 2 rolls of film, 35mm film. And I went around, and I came across a Salvation Army with a band and preaching Jesus and singing. And they had the brass instruments. And I was very lucky with the weather because it was a cloudy day, white sky, clouds. And with the instruments, it was already white reflections in all of the instruments, and they had these white kind of skin faces and the black uniforms. And I was very lucky that in my first roll of film, I actually got some pictures that I could still use and put in a book today.
Do you still have those pictures? Your very first
I think we
ones?
have 1 or 2 left. Unfortunately, I lost a lot. I mean, I should have kept them. I didn't feel they were important at the time, but then I came across them and I thought, wow, these are still look quite beautiful the way I did it. You know, there was a kind of a blonde guy with wavy hair, very kind of fabulous looking guy, and he took off the hat, you know, the military hat, you know, Salvation Army, and he had it under his arm like this, and he had the Bible here, and he was singing. It was actually, you know, he was singing very emotionally about Jesus, so the picture was good.
How often do you critique yourself and work from the past nowadays when you grew so much from back then? Do you do that?
I think, to be honest, when I got a camera in my hand, the first time really, that as I described it to you, I kind of knew there was, and it was like there was a connection, emotional connection, and even although I was trained then as a graphic designer, and I had jobs offered to me to go into a firm and do poster design and design menus and design whatever, but I knew it was the right piece of equipment for what I wanted, you know, what I wanted to do, and I loved it, you know. I mean, so therefore I knew that just that you felt something with the equipment. But the interesting thing for me is, I've never been, you know, there's a lot of men in particular that are drawn into photography, especially in the new digital age. There are men that seriously love cars, and a lot of guys who love cars love watches, you know, like a Rolex watch. My son's one of those. You know, he loves Porsches, and he loves Rolex watches, and he collects them and trades them, and he buys cars and trades cars.
Like kids.
Right? Aaron, who you... And unfortunately, photography attracts guys because they love the equipment,
Yeah.
you know. And I meet these guys all the time, and some of them are incredible. They want to just sit there and talk about the latest lens.
Yes.
And what do you think of this software program that Leica has just
Yeah.
brought out? Are you comfortable working with software program? And I'm sure I'm disappointing to them in a way, because they sit and want to. You know, it's a little bit like if you're into cars and you said, have you had, you know, two guys who had Ferrari, have you ever had any problem with the S17 carburetor? You know, they're like that, but it's about cameras, you know. And I remember I had a brilliant assistant, brilliant. I mean, I never had to worry, you know. It was, I put my hand out and put the right lens on my hand. I mean, every time. He was a brilliant assistant, and I never had to worry with him. He was so solid. It was like fantastic. You know, I could leave the studio. You know, you leave it in a mess in the morning, immaculate studio. You know, and he was with me for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, he said, "I saved up money. I'm going to spend 4 or 5 months putting together my portfolio. Would you look at the portfolio when I put it together?" I said, "Absolutely." And sure enough, I finished shooting one day at 6 o'clock, and he came by and I said, "I'm free for an hour, you know, 6 till 7 for an hour, talking about it." And he brought in the portfolio, and I was actually excited to see it. I want
To see the
I
work.
want to see beautiful work, and wow, that's beautiful what you did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? The pictures were terrible. Really awful. Really awful. They were badly conceived, badly lit, which is really inexcusable. And he had been around me when I was producing really beautiful work. I mean, there's just endless things everywhere lying, you know. Even if we did a commercial, even if I was doing a Chanel campaign or Prada campaign, these things were lying everywhere. And of course I was never negative too much with them, but I said, I think it still needs some work, and I was polite. I tried to help him, suggest things. And said, you have to think more about what you're doing. I said, pictures are a little bit boring. I said, you know, you did a lot of guys in the studio. I said, but the lighting's not quite right. I said in a nice way, as best I could. I wanted him to be successful, but he never was. But he was one of those guys, those technical guys, who was fantastic with all the equipment, everything, but to actually take a picture.
Something was missing.
How is he in communicating with people? Because you said that it's very important. If you don't like to speak to people, you're in the wrong business of photography.
You can be.
So how was he? Let's say, was
How
he
was
one
my
of?
assistant?
Yes.
He was had a
great-
great personality. That was another thing. He had a great personality. He loved photographing women. They were just terrible pictures.
Why do you think
You don't have it.
just no cost?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I got a camera in my
Yeah.
hand.
Instinct
I loved
feeling.
it, but I loved what it could do,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the object. You know, I mean, I loved what it could do,
Yeah.
you know, but I realized that the technical side of photography, which was painful for me, not enjoyable. For my assistant, it was enjoyable. He would sit up all night reading books about how to repair a strobe, you know, and stuff like that. You know, it was like, so I was really interested in how does it look, and then of course I would take a picture on Monday, and I'd say, this is genius. It's
You know right
the
away.
Sistine Chapel. No, I would think this is a long time ago. Not now. I don't have that problem now. But in the beginning, I'd say, what a beautiful picture. It's great. And then on Tuesday, the film would come back. I would look at the film and be disappointed. And on Wednesday, I'd throw it out. So between Monday and Wednesday, there was something happened. Where was my head in doing the picture? But when it came in, and a lot of times it was technical problems, that I had seen something and I didn't have the capability to fix it. So you know. And I mean, there was lots of things. When I changed the concept, say, of French Vogue, you know, once again, that's concept again, to mention again. And I began doing, for 3 years, I shot every single issue of French Vogue. From, I think it was 78 to 81, 82, I shot every single issue.
Do you know the number of covers that you have for Vogue? Because we couldn't find the exact number.
Vogue covers?
Yes.
About 180, I think it is.
We found
There's actually, Aaron can give you, there's actually a nice vertical page of, I think, 60 covers.
Okay.
They're all
We'll
mixed
ask
in
Aaron.
at random. That's quite nice that you could use, because it just has a lot of that. And the same for Rolling Stone is about 60 covers.
I was about to say there is around 60
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk about Steve Jobs' photograph?
Sure. Steve Jobs, I mean, I told the story many times. He was, it was for Fortune magazine. It was to do with massively important people in business and finance, who were people like Bill Gates, I photographed, Warren Buffett, the investor, etc., etc. I photographed for that issue. And Steve Jobs was one of them. I went out to California to shoot him, and they said, we can let you into the conference room at 9 o'clock, and he'll arrive at 9:30. And I said, there's not enough time. I said, I want to be there at 7 o'clock. To double, because I know it's painful for him, I'm sure, to be photographed. I kind of thought that it might be, but he knows it's important. So after a lot of discussion and so on, I said, otherwise I'm not doing it. So you can find somebody else to shoot that. And they said, okay, no, they wanted you to do it. So they let me in at 7 o'clock. We had everything planned, all of the lighting, every single thing. And I always had the lighting set up. I could make a slight adjustment on the light because everybody's geography is different. So you have to do a slight adjustment. And at basically 25 after 9, we were ready by 8:30. 25 after 9, the PR guy came in and said, just to let you know, Steve hates photographers. He hates having his picture taken and so on. And I said, there's nothing I can do about that. And I really didn't care. By this time I didn't, you know, now I go, I care deeply, but don't care if there's if I'm there and I do my best.
Yes.
And I have an idea in my head about how to do it. And I said, there's nothing I can do about that. And he said, but just to let you know, don't be nervous, you know, because I said, I'm not nervous. You know. So anyway, in those 5 minutes, that what he said actually did tweak something in my brain. And I thought at that point, I had him for an hour, 9:30 till 10:30, you know. And sure enough, at 9:30 he arrived. And I said, happy you're here, we're ready for you. He said, okay, hi, how are you? Fine. And I said, I have good news for you. And I said, I only need you for half an hour. And he went, thank you. He said, I'm so busy right now. I said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. And then I was joking. I said, as long as you're nice. He said, well, I'll be nice. As long as you're nice. So now he didn't like to be photographed, but suddenly in one instant I changed it just by saying half an hour, you know. And I knew I could get a shot. And then I put him in a spot. He said, how do you want me to be? And I already had one line worked out. I said, imagine that you're across the table in a conference room and everybody disagrees with you, but you know that you're right. And he said, no problem. He said, every day, like that. And therefore, when he approached the camera, he had that intensity. And it was interesting. He's the only person I ever photographed that when I was photographing him, he never blinked once. It was, his eyes were like this the whole time.
Wow.
Wow.
The whole time. And then when we changed the camera position, then he blinked. But when I was there, and his concentration, and he just, he had a wave of, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
He picked up, I had a Polaroid, 4x5 camera, this big Polaroid, and he picked it up. He said, can I see it? I said, sure. And he said, can I keep this? I said, sure. He said, that's maybe the best picture ever of me. I said, really? And so at this point, I thought, okay, now he's being nice
To you.
to me, because he was supposed to not be nice, but then now he was nice to me. And we talked for a little bit. He left about 10:10, so I did, but
Yeah.
a lot of that was just talking and so on. And he left, he took the Polaroid. And then 3 years later, I got a call from Tim Cook at Apple. He called me and said, Tim Cook, do you still have the Steve Jobs shot? I said, yeah, we do. He said, can I have it now? I said, well, I have to find it and show it. It was already 5:30 here, and we were shutting down, and in California at 2:30. And so he said, please, can you send it? And I said, okay, and we pulled it out. I scanned the negative again and made sure I sent the picture in. And then that night I was at the opera, and my phone beeped, and there was a picture of him, and he died that afternoon. So that's why they wanted the picture. He died approximately 12:30 in the afternoon. I got the call at maybe 3:30. And then they used that photograph
Forever.
for everything on the website. So when you went to Apple, all you saw was the picture
Yes,
of him.
the picture. Wow.
So it was very sad, because you know, if you read, there's a famous book by Walter Isaacson on him. And the book's very good, actually. I don't particularly like the writing of Walter Isaacson, but the Steve Jobs book was very good. And he had a chance that he felt he could cure himself. And he was just drinking carrot juice all day and stuff like that. And if he had simply gone into hospital, they could have got to him.
Yeah.
But by the time he realized that he needed help, it was too late.
Too late.
You know?
Yeah, some visionaries are like that.
And I also read in your book about the story when there's a quote, you said that he noticed that you're photographing with film still. And he asked you why you're not doing digital.
He looked at the camera and he said, you're still shooting film?
Yeah.
Like that. And I said to him, I am, because I don't feel digital's quite there yet.
Yeah.
And he said, I agree with you. So he went like this, I agree with you. And then he said, like this finger at me, but we will get there. So he was right.
It's been 20 years since. Did they get there?
With digital?
It's been 20 years since then, and he
Yes.
said that.
Well,
so are we there
with
yet or not yet?
Digital, I think about 3-4 years later, we transitioned. 4 years later, we transitioned into digital. But digital is very good now. And you have to remember, because of the computer, I had a big advantage. I was 40 years in a darkroom printing chemicals and chemistry. So I was working with film. A lot of young photographers now, they love film, because but it's nostalgic. Digital is actually better. There is
it control?
There is a beauty in, and there is a slightly more organic quality to film, but very hard to kind of to find. I actually prefer digital now than film. But it has to do not so much with the cameras. The cameras I find annoying. The cameras have too much stuff on them. You know, you look at
digital cameras.
If I was to show you a traditional camera, all of the work, a lot of the work there, not all of it, but a lot of the work that's in there was done on. You have an f-stop and a shutter speed on the camera.
Plain.
That's it. There's nothing else on the camera. Now, there are 500 programs inside the camera.
It's
You know?
scary.
Yeah, you
Now
have to
the
learn
latest
it.
camera that somebody sent me Hasselblad sent me. Inside the camera, and the camera is not big. Inside the camera, they have a hard drive, 1 terabyte hard drive inside the camera, not a card.
Yeah, that is.
You don't put a card in.
Yeah.
Inside the camera, and it can take at 100 megapixels. It can take nearly 5,000 pictures on that drive. Then you have to download it, and you can download it 20 minutes. So the 5,000 pictures can be downloaded in 20 minutes, and therefore the hard drive is open again, and you can do another 5,000 pictures. You know, but they also made the camera that it can take a card as well, which is a good idea, because sometimes you say, you know, yes, I've done this job with, you know, for 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, and it's all inside the camera. You have to be a little bit careful with that, because that means that you're walking around with, you know, that's a lot of information that you walk around with, and if you lose the camera, or the camera, you break the hard drive, you can't get the stuff out of it. That's a problem.
Did it ever happen to you that you lost something important or something that you really liked, and then something happened?
There was a time I lost some negatives, but not through equipment failure. I was traveling back from Paris to the shooting, and as I loaded my briefcase that I got a backpack down, I put it on the overhead above me. As I went to get it, an envelope with negatives, I knew that it was up there, right? Because I got the backpack during the flight to mark the negatives and the contact sheet. And I put it back in, and somehow, I kind of had a backpack that had not a zipper, but I had an open back. And somehow, when I went in to the taxi to come from the airport, I noticed it wasn't there. So I was still at the airport, and I tried to get back, and they said they cleaned the plane already. They didn't find anything. Of course, they had it.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have maybe came across it through it out.
Yeah.
Do you remember what were you photographing?
Yeah, it was for a Italian company. It was Blue Marine,
Campaign.
and I had to reshoot.
With the same team, same models?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, that's the only time. It's very bad luck. I mean, it was, even if I look at myself, it was careless, but it was incredible. I mean, the good news is I was always working. The bad news is I was always working.
Yeah. Super busy.
And sometimes it's not just the pressure of the shooting. I don't have a problem with that. But the pressure of just the mechanics of after the shooting.
How did you learn to balance your personal life with? You didn't. So you did sacrifice that for.
I made a lot of. I worked too much. I was too many things.
Is that your regret?
Too many shootings. Too many. 16 million negatives back there. 16 million. I mean, even now, to find stuff on the computer that is all has a telephone number on it, you might say.
Yeah.
It takes to find stuff. It's sometimes difficult. The search is sometimes not great, and it takes a while to find it.
With all of these things that you've been photographing throughout all these years, is there still something that you wish you would take a photo of?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something. There's 10 million things.
Is there something that you're dreaming of, like going somewhere and get?
There's always something. I think a lot of my concentration right now is in the printmaking process. Right now I'm really working as a printer, and I'm doing a very interesting project right now with 17th century Japanese papers that are and just, for me, incredible. You know, my taste. You know,
Yes,
because
yeah.
every, you know,
History.
some people prefer meat, beef. Some people prefer chicken. Some people say I only meat I eat is fish. Some people are vegetarian. Whatever, you know, every different. So there's not a.
But you like history a lot. You like to photograph historical.
Well,
moments.
I'm sometimes taking pictures for this, and it's really a fusion project. Doing the older papers are the patina and the quality of the papers is so extraordinary, and to work is sometimes the ultimate thing is some of the papers are amazing but too fragile to print on, and other times the papers are scanned, and then there is a fusion with imagery onto them, and I find it beautiful, you know. I find the things really in other words, because I like printing. But I always like printing. I always like layers of things. I would always like things. I mean, if you flip over the Cyclops to the back page there, you know. No, but just look. No, you don't need to open it. Just go to the back. Sorry, the back cover.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you see that image there, so that image I shot in black and white, and if you look to your right there, the same
Yes.
image is there. You see the red?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
So the same image is there, okay? And I had found a series of books that I loved that were Russian. All right, how about that? There was a lot of really amazing books produced by Russians in the 1916-1925 period. Really amazing. I have one or two beautiful books on Russian books from that period. And there was a drawing kind of a devil with the tongue out. And I said, I shot that in Morocco in the desert. And the model's name was Waris. She was well known at that time. And so that's her. And just thinking concept, I had traveled with the two horns, some gold paper that I knew I could roll into a horn, you know. So in the drawing, the devil had the two horns and the tongue was out, and I liked that. So therefore, I liked that concept, and then that was the translation of that concept there.
To the photo.
And two things that I brought, if you look closely, you can see she has a gold tooth.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the gold tooth I brought with me from New York. The gold paper I brought with me from New York.
Completely.
And also, can you guess what the other thing I brought in that picture?
Paint for tongue?
Because you don't know, because you're much younger. Food dye.
A what?
Food dye for tongue.
Food
for the
dye
tongue.
for the
Yeah.
tongue. I bought
To
a
make
red
it red.
food
For
dye
the eggs,
tongue.
yes.
So now
Yeah.
Photoshop you just make
No,
it,
you
but
Yeah.
that's
When was this
actually.
photo?
I was actually a 35mm shot.
When was that?
That would have been 1990 maybe,
Okay.
about that time. And then, because we decided to make Cyclops a black and white book and I wanted that shot, I then did a layering with inks. And I had a very nice technique on a light box where I would make a transparency, black and white transparency.
On a Polaroid or on film?
No, on film.
On film.
But so basically, in the darkroom, you project the image, make a contact, and you end up with a black and white transparency. So it's not you often think transparency color, the black and white. I make it about 8x10 size, and then I put it on the light box, and then on top of the negative, which is now a positive, there, I put acetate on top, and then on top of the acetate, I work with inks on top. But because it's then on a light box, I can reveal the image. So in other words, if I put ink on top of it, you don't see any photograph.
Yes,
It's
but if
black.
it's like, yeah.
But if I work on it and then remove it, I can really paint back in the image like that there.
Yeah, layer by layer.
Now it's much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
That was a very early one there. Therefore I like the idea of working with inks and the image. But now, and that's, the Japanese paper is almost a 25-year later continuation of that, of fusing with inks and grain structure and things like that.
It's so fascinating how so many details.
And eras, how everything transformed from being so difficult and you have to use
Yeah, now things are
Yes.
education nowadays. It's much.
Now, I mean, things like lighting are no longer difficult, technical things are less difficult. I have very good computer operators through there that I work with. I'm very good on the computer, but the Japanese girl that you saw there, she's been here 10 years, she's fantastic. And she's quicker on the machinery than I am, but she needs, of course, me there doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I know how it all works, but she's quicker, you know. If I'm driving the car at 30 miles an hour, she can go 70 miles an hour. You know, she's quicker.
Yeah.
A different approach to is not fashion. This is nostalgia. It's the communication of texture, but was already evident and happening in of all places, California, with hippie culture.
Hippies, yes.
You
And
know,
60s, yeah.
there was already,
Boho.
there was out at the Pasadena Rose Bowl, there was a flea market out there that was fantastic. So you had all kinds of clothing there. And there was, that one was there, and in New York you had the Pier Antique Show, where there was a lot of clothing that came in, period clothing. And of course, the people like Ralph Lauren, Donna Karan, all those people, they went, they bought, they would go there. And I remember seeing Donna Karan and two assistants coming out of the Pier Antique Show with 2 armloads of dresses. You know, I also remember.
I wanna go there.
I also remember, as a piece of trivia, when Ralph Lauren did many, many years ago, the first time, he did what was called Western wear. And he did the petticoats, Victorian petticoats, right? And there was a shop on West Broadway that had antique clothing. And I was in that shop. And Ralph Lauren came in with his wife, and they went over to a rack of white petticoats, long ones, shorter ones, whatever. And it was an entire rack, all antique lace. And he came over, and I was looking at jewelry on the other side, and he came over, and he put down a credit card, and he said to the person there, I'd like that rack of clothing. There, here's the credit card, take the thing, write it up, and I'll have it picked up on Monday, right? And he said, I want, as usual, a 15% discount. I said, you're buying the whole rack.
Everything.
It was 20, yeah. And therefore what he did was, he did the lace, right, with denim skirts, but long. So he used the long ones with, and cowboy boots, and the petticoats were slightly longer than the denim skirts. So they came out underneath, and then of course they had different things that they wore, cowboy hats, Western wear.
Western wear,
So it was a variation of kind of
But very clever.
of Western wear, you know. But that was that's what went on back then.
Is there anything that was back then much harder and it's easier now? And something that is harder now and easier back then in terms of...
In a lot of what happens now is imagizing. It's image of clothing. A lot of times some of the editors I was working with, they would sometimes look at a picture and we would get into a discussion about something, an argument about it, they said, we see too much of the clothing. So it's like the different, I made a speech to you about now they're just interested in the clothing, but that even goes beyond that, where they don't care about seeing too much of the clothing. And I would make the point, I said, listen, and you could say, not that I said all of this to them, but I like fabric, photographing fabric. I mean, basically, you're a fashion photographer. Is it important fabric? Well, I guess it is important that you know fabric a little bit and how the light hits it. If it's a black dress or a camel colored dress, whatever, sand color, whatever. But do you have any knowledge about the difference between, you know, a brushed cotton or a raw silk fabric? You know the difference. You say, well, actually I do. You know, and therefore at that point, but it doesn't matter anymore. Who cares? Sort of thing. You know, it doesn't matter. That knowledge is just superfluous. You don't need it. So I think that I would get into a discussion about that and an argument about that, about seeing details in the clothes. And I said, I'm looking sometimes for details in the fabric because I think it makes a better textural photograph.
Yeah.
To see the difference between maybe that you have a fine gabardine wool and a cotton sweater. I mean, the detailing, you know, when it, you know, it is that a better picture, or is that better? And of course, then you say, well, that may be better because you have metal, leather, cord, color, black, skin, you know. That make it better? Or now, unfortunately, a lot of the editors don't care. I was working with editors who were 30 years older than me back then, who were old school. They were 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, delicate. And back then, the editors were,
The
they were heavy.
attention to details.
They were heavy, quite terrifying. But they were knowledgeable. They knew everything. They were, and sometimes people ask me what, you know, the difference. Is a fashion editor from Vogue, are they stylist? Is that a stylist? And I would say yes and no. They are styling the clothes. They are involved in styling of the clothes. But a good fashion editor is a combination of two things. It's a combination of styling and art directing. An art director, I shot for Vogue magazines for 15 years. And art directors from Vogue never came to the shooting. Never. I never saw an art director from Vogue magazine. You might have a meeting before the shooting up at the office, but they never came to the shooting. Whereas the editor is the one at that time who was controlling the mood, the ambience, the suggestion. Back then, there would be, the editor would have a meeting, first of all, with a folder, with a makeup artist. And in the folder, she would have some of the clothing. Then she would have suggestion about thinking that the black line here might work, dark eyes, a deep cadmium blue in the eyes, or bronze color, whatever, you know. And she would go over that with the makeup artist. Okay? Then the hairdresser, same thing. Clothes, this here,
Makeup.
this hair could be higher, could be better. I got a nice wave here, maybe, whatever. And so she has a meeting. Then she has a meeting with the photographer, and then she shows the clothes to me, the makeup suggestions to me, and the hair suggestion to me, asking my opinion. Did I like that? What do you think? I think this is good, whatever. So well prepared. And it was like that. And very often, you'd be working and getting ready, and the editor would come over and say, like whisper to me, she said, look at the way the girl is sitting right now, waiting for you. They're waiting for me to come in. And the girl might be, sitting like this, waiting for me. Like that. And she said, just have her stay like that. So you had somebody, that's called art direction.
Yeah.
And yet, what was her job? She's fashion editor. Stylist would get the girl ready upstairs in the dressing room and send her down. And then she'd get the next girl ready. That's a stylist.
Yes.
Do you think nowadays, knowing that everything can be edited afterwards, how does that impacts the photography today? And styling and editing and the art direction and everything.
There's another thing. I'll tell you even worse. How does that affect it? I'll expand your question a little bit. How does it affect you that you have a video screen like this and the picture comes up, every picture comes up on the screen for hair, makeup, editor, whoever wants to look at the screen can look at the screen, and they all have an opinion on that. That's before.
It's only
We would do a Polaroid. The Polaroid would be put in a small frame, a cardboard frame, just to look at, precisely in a frame. Exposure, aperture, written on the frame, and then it would be put on the side. People could look at it. But remember, you'd be looking at one picture.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a shooting, it's coming up like this on a screen. People looking at it, and they all have opinions. The editor says, "Oh, she's smiling too much." No, and I would say, "No, she's not smiling too much." And then you get into a conversation. Do you like her smiling? No, I don't. Not at all. Then why is she smiling? Because you're not watching the shooting. Because she's smiling, but then after she smiles, the look is different. The face had moved.
Yeah.
And now she's different. And she's looking to the side a little bit. And the way she looks is because 2 frames ago she smiled.
Yeah.
Now the face changed and she's quiet.
Yeah.
So she has to smile because models feel the flash is going. So if the photographer is taking a picture, the shooting must be going well. So it's a bit like that.
psychological again.
Yeah, psychological, but you move and shoot it. So, but she's smiling to it. So basically, what do? You say, okay, you don't like her smiling, so therefore what? You go to the girl and we say, okay, by the way, no smiling. Okay, no smiling. So then you do not have the elasticity of the face moving.
Life itself.
Okay.
And
right.
we noticed in the book you used pretty plentiful of Polaroids that you had.
Polaroids.
Polaroids,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
there's tens of thousands of them.
Yes.
There's
And
boxes full of them.
and this is something like from the past again, right? That I'm fascinated that first of all you kept it because while we were working.
But the interesting thing is, I'll tell you a quick funny Polaroid story that's really funny, I think funny. We did Polaroids as a record, a diary of the shooting, right? They were put in boards. We had these cardboard, little black cutouts, right? And we would put in the frame just about 2 bits of tape on the back with the exposure written on the back. And then sometimes at the end of the day, we would tape the boards together so you would see 12, 16, 18 images like that, coming across. And we would then put it in a filing cabinet just on top of one another like that. And eventually filing cabinet after filing cabinet was full of these. And then outtakes were rubber banded together when they were dry, always at the end of the day when they were dry, because Polaroid is wet.
Right.
Dry, rubber banded together, and then basically put in a box. And there was, not so long ago, well, I mean, maybe quite long ago, 50 years ago, the gallery we have in London, which is Hamilton's gallery in London, you know, it's a very good gallery. And he came here and he's looking at the vintage prints. And then he said, "Did you ever keep any of your Polaroids?" And of course we were laughing, you know. And we have these big plastic bins that have 5,000 Polaroids per bin. So we started bringing them through like that. But we didn't, I never kept them with saying, "I wonder if somebody would like to buy," you know. And he actually took the 8x10, so it's a big Polaroid, like this big, 8x10 Polaroid of the Golden Boy, like that. And he put it in an amazing box frame that was just really beautifully made. It was, I mean, it was basically $3,000-4,000 frame. So he took the 8x10 Polaroid and he sat it. He had a beautiful antique table in the middle of the gallery, and he basically sat it on the table, not on a wall. It was because it was like a box. It just sat there. The Polaroid of that shot there, and for a show that I did there, and the day before the show opened, Elton John came by, and he looked at it, and he said, "Is that sold yet? Is it a Polaroid?" And I said, "No, it doesn't open until tomorrow." He said, "I'll buy it." And Elton John just bought that image.
Yeah, the golden.
And when he sold his collection at Christie's, I had spoken to him. I said, "Oh, I was curious to see, but," I said, "you didn't put the Golden Boy into the thing." He said, "No, I never sell that." He said, "I never sell that." You know? So that's the Polaroid story.
Yeah.
And in other words, there was never an intention. It was a record. And in fact, the way that we used it in Chaos was that way. It's a record. It's just what here's a bunch of Polaroids of what we shot.
And there are even 2 Polaroids that were damaged with water.
Oh yeah. Well, there is. We had a leak here, and we had
the studio.
And sometimes Polaroids. Sometimes there are patinas on Polaroid. You have to remember, sometimes Polaroids are done in the Caribbean, and humidity. There's sand. There's all that kind of stuff. And remember, it was never like, okay, remember we may sell this one day, put it in a special box, and then put it in plastic and put it in a folder and put it in a filing cabinet. I mean, it was just a record.
But it ended up so beautifully in the book.
Oh
the
yeah,
way
well,
it is destroyed by water.
Of course, I was interested in that. There's a 8-foot by. There was a Polaroid that I found. It just came from a Vogue Homme shooting of a man running in a coat. He was just, and it was and the interesting thing was, I found the shooting many years later, 20 years later, and I found the shooting, and the Polaroid was better than any shot in the shooting. The shooting was okay, but the Polaroid shot was better. And we actually scanned it very high. It's only this big. We scanned it very high resolution, and we made it 8 feet.
Oh wow!
So it's big. It's
From this big
in the corridor.
From this.
So it was from this big to massive. I mean, we've done that before. I've done that kind of resolution. But the Japanese papers now, we scan at massive resolution. They're beautiful.
Can I ask something else?
Are you done?
No, we have one more important part.
No. I really want to know, when you were growing up as a little kid,
Yep.
before you realized.
Hold on. Takes me a while to go that far back.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Take your time.
All right.
So before you yourself realized who you are and that you are a visionary and what you have in you, was there someone who saw it first in you? Do you remember something about that time?
I mean, yes. I've been married now 66 years.
Wow.
So I would say that all the way along, I would never have been able to do what I did. So all this talking is about me, I did this, me, I did that, and so on. But really my wife was really always behind everything.
So was she with you?
Well, she had a good eye, but on top of that, she was always encouraging. That's what you need. You know, what do you think? Oh, should we do this? We're comfortable in Los Angeles. Should we go to New York? Yes, let's go to New York. These are big decisions.
Yeah.
3,000 miles with a family, move to New York.
Family, the whole family.
You know, and then how about you're in London? Let's move to LA. How's that from?
Continent.
And always encouraging, always making sure that there's a wind in the sails,
Fuel.
you know, to help you. So I would say that yes, I mean, for sure, you know, like my parents were never understood what was going on. My father saw me do some pictures when I was quite successful and had a lot of work and so on. He saw me do a shooting, and he said to me at the end of the day, he said, "Funny work for a man." He said, "Funny work for a man to do this." You know, it's like, because it was fashion photography, you know, taking, adjusting dresses, speaking to hair and makeup, and you know,
Womanly.
so many like gay male models and gay hairdressers around and all of that kind of stuff. It was just, it was like funny that I got paid to do this, and that was even like this, like
Paid to
he
do
was
that
still-
weird work.
and I remember him saying, even when I was working all the time and we were successful, we made a lot of money, that he said, you know, he was on the edge, and I knew what he was saying. He said, he always wanted me to be an art teacher. You know, he said,
That's a real
and he was
job
kind of
for
like
him.
always hoping that one day I would suddenly, he would have been very happy if I'd said at the height of my career, I'd say, okay, now I'm going to be an art teacher. And he would have said,
Finally.
Generation different.
Did he ever understand what are you doing actually?
I'm sorry?
Did he ever understand the scope of your work?
I think just when I was like photographing the Queen, things like that. I mean, then it was like, wow, you're going to be photographing the Queen or something like that. You know, and I think the family eventually realized things like, as a British person, to get an OBE is for a British person
Yes.
means nothing, I think, to the rest of the world. But an OBE, if you're British and you got an OBE, that's a very kind of prestigious, you know, I mean, David Beckham got
Yes,
OBE,
yes, yes.
you know,
I know
and stuff
what
like
you're
that.
talking
And,
about.
and a lot of Helen Mirren got an OBE, and then eventually she got a Dame, and also David Beckham was knighted, you know,
Yes.
after that.
Yeah.
But to get an OBE,
It's
but
a
then
huge
when
approval,
that
I mean-
when that began to happen, the family was impressed.
So did you feel back then as an artist that you were misunderstood because as a young boy probably when you wanted to do this photography work and
Was I missing out on something?
no, yeah, did you feel like misunderstood by your family or someone ever later in life too?
I would say I was 28 by the time I started working. Because I was 1 year in the Air Ministry in London, working on missile trajectories. You know, it was at the end of the Cold War. And I was doing that. And then I went and I worked in a laboratory in a chocolate factory. And then after that, I went back, I went back to school, but went into university. So I had 2 years out. So between 18 and 20, I had 2 years out. And then at the age of 20, I went into university and I spent 4 years, art college, art, graphic design, etc., some photography. And then 3 years, that took me to 27. So by the time I was starting to work, I was 28.
Pretty late for back then.
You know?
Serious age.
So it was. I think that 1927 was very tough. Really, you might say brutal, because I had no help from anybody. You know? Except us, my wife and I together. You know, and I had kids.
And she was with you.
You know, so it's like you're talking about, you're successful.
That's what
You
we
have
see
houses
from
in
this
Connecticut. You have a house in Morocco. You had a house in Scotland. You live in a penthouse in New York. And yes,
But
that was later.
Yeah.
That happened.
we cannot finish this interview without asking you about Casey.
About
Casey the monkey.
oh right, oh yes,
Please.
Casey.
Yes.
Um,
How did it happen?
well,
You met
it
Casey?
was a simple thing happened. I did an advertising job for a liquor company, and they wanted a picture of a monkey, and I said, okay, that's fine. They organized it. They said, we know somebody that has chimpanzee, and so I said, well, it's funny, I've never photographed a monkey before. And so the monkey came with 2 trainers to the studio, and when I arrived there, the monkey was in the kitchen, sitting at the kitchen table, having a mug of tea, you know, and was holding the mug like this, you know. And I always remember I arrived there and said hello, and the monkey did this to meet me.
And how do you compare working with Monkey and Monkey's personality? Because it's obvious he has plenty of it.
Sure.
It's a boy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, male. Working with human, I mean, people.
It's
Psychologically,
a different experience. I mean, you know, it's a different concept of thinking and being, you know. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, it's different, and of course, I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of the monkeys have that same idea. They like the attention. They like a dog. You know, a lot of dogs love the ball. You throw a ball. You know, they like that. So I think humans are psychologically a lot more complex. A lot of the supermodels, some of them are surprisingly sharp. A lot of models are stupid, but some of the supermodels, like Cindy Crawford, she was smart. I photographed her when she was 15, 16 years old, like I did Christy Turlington. And Christy Turlington was smart and a clever person, and Cindy Crawford was a smart and clever person, you know. And then other of the supermodels were nice, like Naomi Campbell. I photographed her when she was 15, and I knew her for years. She was always well behaved with me. She had a terrible reputation, but she was well behaved with me. I think, you know, I think she would come in and say, well, you knew me when I was 15, so I can't give you attitude. Why you give me attitude, you know?
Was there any person that you photographed and when they walked in, their aura, their personality is so big, but then the photography doesn't quite catch that? Can you think of anyone?
I had a disastrous shooting. The first shooting I did with Nicole Kidman, I had a disastrous shooting. I would consider it my only failed shot. I mean, there's other ones I think I could have done better. You know, instead of my shot being 9 out of 10, it's you know, it's a 7 out of 10. But this shooting with Nicole Kidman was a 2 out of 10. And I would blame myself for it, really, because she was up and coming, so she wasn't known. Nobody really knew her, but they'd heard there was a young actress. That was, so she wasn't. If you went in the street and said Nicole Kidman, no one would know who the hell she was. You say Nicole Kidman, you don't know. And it was really an interesting lesson. I'd been shooting all day, and she came between 5:30 and kind of 8 o'clock, and then she had to do a TV interview after. in the evening after 8 o'clock. And I said, that's fine. And I was printing in the darkroom, and she arrived, and I had spoken with the art director of the magazine, and she had done a water movie called Dead Calm. And it was a thriller movie, and she was fantastic in it, actually, I thought. And it was on a yacht, where a guy captured them in a yacht, almost a pirate kind of present day. And I said, let me do the portrait with water. They wanted a portrait with water. And anyway, and I said, I explained that to makeup artists. I'm going to use Evian spray water on the face. Okay. And the makeup artist took Nicole, and hair was going to be simple, just spritzed. And I went into the darkroom at about 5:45. And I was in the darkroom, and I got completely lost in the darkroom printing time. When you're in the darkroom, it's another world. The door closes in black, and you start printing and concentrating. And the next thing was, I'm looking at it, and it's 5:45. Nobody came to get me. There's assistants everywhere. Nobody came to get me. And it's like 7:20, And sometimes makeup does take a long time, but not for this, not for actually. So I went up, and what had happened was the makeup artist was speaking to Nicole. She thought Nicole was beautiful, and she did a French Vogue makeup, kind of black eyes and all of that kind of stuff, And then I looked at it, and then I got the spray. She looked like the Wicked Witch of the North. Horrendous. I even looked at it, I still have it, I think. I even looked at it, wondering if it was as bad as I remembered it. And in fact, when I saw it, it was even worse than I remembered.
Oh, wow.
And the shooting was unusable. And in fact, later, I sat down and had a coffee with a lady. I photographed her 2 or 3 other times. And I did she won the Academy Award for it. There was a movie called The Hours.
Yes.
And I did the poster for that movie. I did a lot of movie posters.
Yeah.
You did a poster for my favorite movie, Memory of Geisha.
Which one?
Memory of Geisha?
Members of a Geisha, right, and also Kill Bill.
Yeah, Kill Bill too, yes.
Bill.
Oh, I love
And
it.
I did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, that's the part of it.
And so I sat down and spoke with her, and I said, that was a disaster. She said, what happened? I said, my fault. I said, the makeup artist, all we needed, that could have been a 10-minute Steve Jobs situation, 20-minute Steve Jobs. All I needed was some mascara, that when you spritz, the mascara runs. That's all. That was it. I didn't need. You could stain the lips a little bit, color maybe, black and white shot, just so it had some density. She had freckles. So it would have been perfect. But you start doing the work on it, then it was not good. I mean, photographer, photographer can never blame hair and makeup. Because if you don't like it, the hair and makeup's not good, don't shoot it. Because they can call you a shitty guy for not taking the picture, but they can't call you a shitty photographer.
If you can go back to when you were a little boy, let's say when you were that 5-year-old boy that you're... Yeah. What would you tell him now with all of your life experience?
I would probably say, beware of one aspect for the future. Don't work too much. Work, but don't work too much. I worked too much. I did too many things. And it was problematic, but I'm still like that today.
You wouldn't...
It's
I'm
a
still
nature.
Working.
Yeah,
I've got friends who have been retired for 20 years. Retired for 20 years.
But what do you do?
And you were just in Paris
living
shooting.
in Florida.
Yeah.
They're retired. They're not working. Photographers don't retire. I mean, it's the obvious thing. Good news and bad news. The bad news is you never get to retire. The good news is you don't have to retire.
And you don't want to.
Well, because you're doing something you like.
Yeah.
So, what am I doing today? You know, like the different projects I'm working on, different things. You know.
Yeah.
So,
We're excited to
so
see.
in other words, don't. Yeah, get on the bus that you decided to get on, where you're going. You know, but just sometimes take a break, get off the bus and take a break. And I think sometimes the work would be, you know, the quality of the work is based on the intensity that I worked at. So the good news was the intensity. The bad news was there was so much intensity that it was overshooting. I don't mean overshooting pictures. I mean overdoing.
If you did take those breaks, what would you do during that time?
I think try to do almost nothing. Read. You know, I enjoy that reading is nice.
Yeah.
You know, and relaxing. You know, I have a beautiful house in Morocco, a modernist house, really beautiful, that has amazing olive grove. You can go there and keep donkeys there. They're
Donkey's my favorite animal.
So happy to see me when I'm there. The donkeys are like, he's back, like that. So you go there and relax. I relax with my wife. My wife and I like to go to Paris or London, spend a week there, go to theatre, things like that. So
Small things.
she's always pushing for that to go and have some time off and so on, which is good. I'm always resisting because I have stuff to do. But
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's have some time off and play the game. You're just gonna pick this or that. We'll give you two. I'm gonna go first. Cats or dogs?
I go.
The image everyone knows or your personal favorite nobody talks about?
There was a Yoji Yamamoto dress that I did in a sculptor's studio. Actually, it was the studio of Henry Moore, very famous British sculptor. And he had a show, a private show, in the gallery. And when I walked into, there's a big white wall there. And just hanging, left over from a display, was a piece of black fabric hanging there. There's just nothing, just a piece of matte black fabric, pinned once and just hanging, not laid out as a canvas or anything like that. It was just hanging there. And if you pass me that book,
The Cyclops?
it's in there. If I can find it. And then, after I did the gold shot of Sade, I then said to her, now I said, let's do a nude. She said, what do you mean nude? I said, just you, there was a balcony. I said, I'll shoot down and lay you on the ground. And she said, well, what am I wearing? I said, nothing. She said, well, I don't do nudes. So,
Oh.
Yeah.
so I did that.
Beautiful.
I think it's in chaos.
It's
Oh.
yes.
Yeah, it's in
We
chaos.
have that.
Ah, I found it.
Ah.
So remember I told you the black flag
Yeah.
was
Yes.
just hanging it? So I brought the girl through and put her in front of it because she was the big model at the time. And I put her in front of it, but then I did this shot.
Whoa.
Wow.
And that I think is a strong image.
It's so
And it's great.
surreal.
You see the clothes. You see the clothes, what it is, the shoes,
Yeah.
you see the length of the dress.
Yes,
You see this clown
yeah.
piece here, and the black flag adds a mood to the picture. So a lot of these pictures I show you now is what I described to you.
Yes.
What concept and movie
Yeah.
are and so on. So just to let you see.
It is so surrealistic in a
You have
way.
another question?
Yes, we have
Yeah.
few more.
A few more. Fancy dinner or perfect pasta at home?
Probably perfect pasta at home, but I'm afraid it's another apples and oranges. If you,
Yeah, that's.
if you have perfect pasta at home for 10 nights and you say, let's go out somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I would say probably home.
One lens forever or one lighting setup forever?
I don't have a lighting setup because if you're photographing people, every face is different.
Yeah.
So if you have one lighting setup, you know, there are some standards that people use the same lighting setup because the people look good. But if you're looking for another, look at that shot of Christy Turlington. If you're looking for another layer, another level, you come up. Sometimes people find it and they're very successful and they're very good at it. Peter Lindbergh, very successful with the way he lit it. He always lit the same way. Not 95% of the time, always black and white, always lighting the same kind of way, where he would have a supermodel, not with too much makeup, little bit of, but not much, and same lighting, and guess what? They look beautiful. That's I'm not against that. I mean, you know, there's that shot I did that's well known of Kate Moss, the beautiful.
Yeah. When she was.
So the concept for that's another shot that had a concept. I had an illustration. It was done in Morocco on a roof.
Yes.
On her birthday, right?
Right? And I had an illustration of a fairy in the woods that was a really nice illustration with the hands like this, and it looked like she was looking for something. You know, the fairy, like this. And the hand was next to the foot, like this. And I showed the illustration to Kate, and I said, "You're nude, but you're looking for something." I said, "I don't care if you look at something and you see 20 palm trees and you count the palm trees, like 1, 2, 3. I just need you to feel that you're looking, not just I'm
Staring.
so pretty." And so when you look at that shot, you have a look at that, and you can, because I had a
Ready.
move, ready to jump, but not too much. It was not that kind of shot. It was a quiet shot. It was observational. It was almost like, did I hear something? You know, so you look at that, and that's film school. You know, it can all come down to that. To make the shot.
A 5-star hotel or somewhere with character?
That's probably somewhere with character. But I don't mind a 5-star hotel. I don't, as long as it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Cooking at home or ordering takeout?
My entire life, I've never cooked anything. Nothing.
Nothing. So takeout.
Nothing. I've never cooked.
Wow.
I mean, can I make an egg? No, hard-boiled, lightly boiled egg? Yes.
That's a skill. It
I'm married
requires.
to a very, very, very good cook.
So
And-
lucky.
The perfect marriage is a husband that likes to do the dishes and clean up and finish everything so the kitchen's beautiful. And a wife who loves to cook. So
Oh, vice
even
versa.
if she messes the kitchen up tremendously with everything everywhere, I don't care. So therefore I'm a neat freak a little bit, and my wife is not. So
Balance.
a balance you have to.
Beautiful.
That's why
I'm-
66
I'm a-
years.
I'm a recovering neat freak. It's like an alcoholic is a recovering.
Recovering.
Window seat or aisle?
I would say nowadays, always in the past was window, but now aisle.
Someone.
And the preference business class.
Of course.
First class, maybe.
If I'm traveling for work
Yes,
to
of
Europe,
course.
now business class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with the snob.
Yeah.
I want business. I'm a first class person. I need this. I need that. I need a 5-star hotel. I can be happy in a motel as long as it's clean with hot water. And I don't need business you know,
Perks.
for other than that, a lot of time people will fly you in on a Sunday night to arrive in Paris or London or Berlin or Milan, and they would like to have a meeting in the afternoon. So, okay, so
Yeah.
then I'm going to sleep on the plane,
Yeah, of course.
right? So I need to sleep on the plane. I need to be comfortable. So that's what I do. It's
Neat.
not
Yeah.
a snob thing.
It's neat.
Taken care of.
Better subject, someone insecure or someone overconfident?
I would say insecure because I can work better with that. I can maybe pull something from that. If somebody's overconfident, sometimes there's a tendency that they give you one thing. You know, they give you that. And to twist them out of that is hard work.
Hard.
Being early or making an entrance late?
Being early or
Making an entrance late.
like I did this morning. My preference deeply inside me is to be on time. Even if I have a model who's due to come and see me at 2 in the afternoon and I'm at lunch, and it's just a model coming as a go-see, I would want to be here.
You still do go-sees?
Yeah, once in a while, yeah. Now it's difficult because a lot of the work I'm heavily involved in the fine art market of things. So in the past, I would look at old material to put in a gallery.
Yes.
You know, I've got people love this material,
Yeah, of course.
you know, to go in a gallery. And now I'm producing a lot of work for the gallery that isn't a shooting for Vogue with a supermodel or a celebrity or whatever. And so, therefore, a lot of my time is spent doing that.
Right, do that. Final question. Being remembered as a fashion photographer or as an artist?
You don't need my answer.
We haven't.
I was always concerned with being an artist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always. That's fact.
Yeah.
Take you back to that book.
Yes.
Why doesn't all these fashion pictures,
Yes,
what I have to do, why can I not put them in the book? Because if you see some of the fashion that's in there, you see the black flag shot, for example. And I'm not saying the black flag shot is amazing, incredible. I'm just saying it's strong. And when you see that shot, and you put just a nice, pretty shot of a girl, you know, maybe, you know, with an ice cream or something, and smiling, and she looks beautiful and pretty. It just doesn't work in that book. It's not powerful enough. You know, it's not. When you look at this,
It's a beautiful but not art.
but you know, the book is. This was clever.
Yeah.
The graphic here. He asked me which was my blind eye,
It's left.
and I said the right one.
The right one.
You see? So my left eye is the good one. So if you look at this here, I don't see what this
You don't see that side.
That's-
Okay, so
that's
it's
a nice
opposite
idea.
from you.
Wow.
there. Here. See?
Yeah.
That's a LA hip hop picture, and that's attitude.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the lighting and the jewelry.
Everything.
You know, right at the end, I put the jewelry here. He said, I brought some jewelry. We were doing the shot, and I said, can you put on the 2 bracelets here? You know, the tattoo. And if you look carefully at the tattoo, it's a great tattoo. It's a teddy bear in the electric chair. Little teddy bear.
Yes. So to close this amazing interview and time you gave us, can you give us an autograph? Sign
Sure.
our books, please. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'll do that.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me just take it over.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Whatever. It's easier for you. And guys, thank you Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe.